who used to be a teammate was like, you were always a bully in the locker room, and his response was to threaten to beat the guy up. It's just like,
that was it.
It's like, I'm not a bully, I'll beat you up, dude. What the fuck?
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host for tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I'm here with, I feel like I normally describe you as lovely and beautiful, so I'm going to go with talented. There we go. Lovely, beautiful, and talented.
I don't forget compliments.
I was trying to think of like different words to use, and my brain's not like thinking of any, so I'm going to go with those ones again. I'm here with Vinny Gonzalez. How's it going, dude?
Good, man. What about you?
Pretty good. Ready to talk some AFC North. Get back into this swing after our week of being, as you so eloquently put it, dogs trapped in a hot car without Shrek. So I'm ready to get back into the normal swing of things now that Shrek's back from vacation and has let us out of the hot car. But so, guys, the Let's Talk Fantasy Football is sponsored by the No Halftime. The No Halftime app isn't your typical fantasy sports service. You get to create one-on-one fantasy matchups, and you can use the code LTFF for a free sign-up bonus. So tonight we're going to go through a little bit of news. We're going to talk about the AFC North. We're doing 3 teams tonight. We'll do the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens, and then Rogers and Don are going to cover the NFC North teams that we didn't talk about already, as well as the Steelers in our next podcast. So keep an eye out for that as well. And then we'll get into a couple reader questions that came in this week. So, Vinny, let's start with some news. Von Miller, the contract thing, what's the situation there? You got to tell me about it because I literally didn't read it.
Well, I wrote in our notes here that shit is getting pretty serious, and that was when he was threatening a serious holdout like season long. But recently, like minutes, like an hour ago, they said that reports show that they're closing in on a 6-year deal worth $70 million guaranteed. So Von Miller might be getting his way. If he does not get his way on this last shot they have right now, then he is definitely going to hold out and not play some games. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a ton of guaranteed money. That's a lot of money. That guy's going to be real rich.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully he does, they do get that worked out, because even though he's in the same division as my favorite team, an NFL without Von Miller doing fun stuff would just be less fun. Let's talk about Alshon Jeffrey. He's unlikely to get his extension deal done, and will likely remain under the franchise tag this season, making $14.6 million. That's also not a bad number, but obviously, you want to see, just for the sake of a guy being comfortable with the team, you'd like to see that contract get done. Do you think this has any impact on his fantasy outlook for the season?
No, and I don't think this is like a vicious holdout threat. I think Alshon Jeffrey is pretty comfortable making $14.6 million this year no matter what. So he'll probably continue to play under the franchise tag and maybe a midseason deal, if anything. But I don't think there's any bad blood between him and Bears. So this should affect nothing. And Alshon Jeffrey will continue to be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fun. I like him being awesome. Justin Tucker looking to make Steven Gostkowski money after this season, or he's going to leave the Ravens. I say do it. Just get that money, dude. But in all seriousness, he's really, really good. He's like one of the all-times in his first couple seasons. And, in terms of fantasy kickers, he's definitely up there as well. You got anything to add on him?
No, he's a great fantasy kicker. He's a great kicker in the NFL. I think he's close to 87% success rate on his kicks. So if the Ravens let him go after this season, it seems like a mistake. And even kicker contracts aren't that bad. I'm sure they'll work it out.
Yeah. Hopefully they do. And if not, hopefully he gets to a team that's got a good offense so that he gets to kick a lot more field goals. The Isaiah Crowell news, I'm sure everyone's seen it with his him sending out that picture with the cops. Since we're talking about the Browns today, I guess we can just leave that for later on, and we'll come back to it. Denard Robinson, we talked about it in our last podcast, woken up by cops in his car in the driver's seat in a pond. The update for this week is that he got cited for careless driving. Unbelievable.
Shame on you, Denard Robinson.
Yeah, so weird. That's just like such a bizarre story. And then this actually does have some fantasy relevance for a lot of different things. The Saints are the front runners right now to sign Anquan Boldin. That matters, both for Boldin, as a potential fantasy prospect, though I don't really see that as much. But it also matters for guys like who we were, considering in that offense, like Willie Snead and Kobe Fleener, Mike Thomas, these types of guys. What's your take on the situation?
I think if he does sign with the Saints, those guys' value that we were just talking about, like in the receiving core, kind of take a hit. But other than that, I think it boosts Drew Brees a lot, and that's probably all I can think of for now, until he signs.
Fair enough. I think that's just about right. So yeah, that is the news that we wanted to get through today. So let's move right on to the AFC North. And let's start with your favorites, the good old Cincinnati Bengals.
Yay!
We've got new offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson went to the division rival Browns, where he is the head coach. So the OC is now, is it Ken Zampese or Zampese? I want it to be Zampese.
It's Ken Zampese. It is.
Oh yes, awesome, dude.
It's much cooler than Zampese or Zampese.
Yeah, Zampese. I was reading that. I was like, please be Zampese. But that makes me happy that it is Zampese. What do you got on the Bengals just in general this year? What do you think of their prospects? Vegas has them for 9.5 win total.
Okay, I mean that's all right. I've seen people completely just kind of I think Adam Rank on NFL.com was saying they're going to go 4-12. I've seen anywhere from that to like 11-5 again, and I think it's going to be closer to 9 wins or 10 wins. The division's definitely tough. Ravens are now healthy. Browns, I guess, added some shit, whatever, and the Steelers are crazy. So it's going to be tough, but I think Vegas is pretty dead on. But a lot of the coaching staff change is pretty big. And they lost a lot of dudes in free. They lost the offseason basically. So a lot of stuff changed, but the main dudes are still there, like Andy Dalton, AJ Green, the running backs. So they're there to hold it down. And I think, I'm always hopeful for the playoff win. I just hope they make it again and get another chance at it. Yeah,
definitely. Saying Adam Rank says they're going to go 4-12. Adam Rank also says you should draft Stephen Gostkowski in the 5th round.
Yeah.
So that's take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think you're probably right. I think they're on track to be a good team again. I'm interested to see. I read up on Zampese a lot. Basically, he's been their QB coach since 2003. So he sort of mentored Carson Palmer and Andy Dalton throughout their careers. So it's good because there's a certain level of comfortability with the offense, a certain level of comfortability with Dalton. He was also the receivers coach and then the passing game coordinator during those greatest show on turf years for the Rams under Mike Martz, which is kind of interesting. That's a very different type of offense than what the Bengals have run recently. They were 29th in offensive pace in 2015, 26th in pass percentage. So last year at least, they wanted to slow the ball down and run the ball a lot. And I think that'll probably continue. And then, as you said, Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu both left. That was 152 targets out of the 505 passing attempts as a team in 2015. So that's significant. There's a void to fill there. And we'll go into how we think they're going to fill it. But let's start out with Dalton. Currently 11.05. The QB, the
15.
QB 15. What's your take on Dalton this year? You like that price?
Oh, I love that price. I'm thinking if you can wait and still get like a very solid QB that's better than Andy Dalton, fantasy wise, like Carson Palmer's late, Eli Manning. the Derek Carrs, Philip Rivers. And then later on, you can pair him up with a later guy like Andy Dalton if you want to take 2 QBs just for insurance. I think Andy Dalton's price is perfect for that. And the reason the value is taking a hit from how good he was on pace to just, I forget. He was definitely going to finish in the top 10 until he broke his thumb. So it kind of surprised a lot of people, but now that everyone's down on the offense since a lot of the pieces left, that's where his ADP has sunk to, and I think it's a good value, especially if he's a QB2.
Okay, yeah, I'm less high on Dalton than you going into this year. I don't think he's a guy that I'm going to try and target in drafts. Basically, last year he had career highs in adjusted yards per attempt and in QBR. He was actually 3rd in the league in adjusted yards per attempt and 5th in QBR. And it's possible that was, Dalton really evolving into, an elite tier of quarterbacks, or it's possible that it was efficiency that he can't keep up. And I'm not really sure what it would be, really, but I don't really want to invest too much in that efficiency because it was way higher than anything he's done in previous years. He was also tied for 9th in quarterback fantasy points per game. So, good, but it's like you're not – Dalton was a good, solid fantasy starter for a lot of the year last year, but it was based on efficiency over volume. And I don't see his volume going up too much this year. Plus, now with the news that Eifert may miss some games, I just don't think I'm going to be likely to invest in Andy Dalton. I don't want to play him with Eifert out, really.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, like you said, the efficiency was a big thing with him, and that's probably going to, if Andy Dalton continues to play at this level, it's going to be efficiency driving him not having huge games. So that's probably going to how it's going to stay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a little bit of differing opinions on Andy Dalton, but we both can kind of agree on the main points there. Jeremy Hill, or do you want to talk about Gio first? Which one do you want to go into?
I don't. It doesn't matter. You can go with either one.
All right. Let's talk about Jeremy Hill. He's currently going 7th pick in the 6th round. Oh, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but similar to the rest of our podcasts, the ADP that we're using is from Fantasy Football Calculator, and it's from 12-team PPR leagues. So he's currently the 7th pick in the 6th round, RB28, a couple picks behind his backfield mate, Gio Bernard. Hill was not very good last year. He definitely had a sophomore slump. Not very efficient, but this was coming on the heels of a really, really excellent and promising rookie year. Last year, when did you draft him? 2nd round last year?
Yeah, I had the wraparound from the first pick, so I took him in the 2nd right before the turn. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people were on Jeremy Hill because he was amazing his rookie year. He went from having 5.1 rushes, yards per carry to having 3.6 last year, which is just terrible. And I think his ADP now kind of matches his expectation. He's going to outperform, I think, RB28, but where did he finish last year? He wound up finishing RB20 in PPR. So I think his value is pretty dead on for the drafts. Drafting Gio before him makes complete sense to me. He's pretty game script dependent last year. A lot of goal line carries. That was pretty much his only upside that saved you from owning him last year. It helped me out some weeks, but really screwed me the other weeks. He just wasn't able to get it going, and Gio outperformed him pretty much every time. And he basically lost the job after those fumbles he had week 2 against the Chargers, and they just went all downhill from there.
Yeah, no, it's I think he'll be better this year than he was last year. I think, not as efficient as he was his rookie year, but for example, Football Outsiders, they have a stat called effective yards, which basically it multiplies one of their efficiency stats by running back attempts and comes up with a yardage amount. Jeremy Hill's effective yards were 976 compared to his actual yards, which was 792. So what that kind of seems to imply is that
room for improvement.
Yeah, based on his efficiency, he should have had more yards than he did. So he might have been, the victim of bad luck in some situations, that sort of thing. But Jeremy Hill will likely be a better rusher and a more effective rusher this year than he was last year. His carries in both years were basically exactly the same, 222 and then 223. And he also, I don't know if, you watch them more closely, but it seemed to me that he played better in the second half of the year, outside of that. Like, everyone remembers the fumble in the playoff game, obviously, but overall, it seemed like he gained more confidence and ran better in the second half of the year to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, during and after the Chargers game, he was really shook up. If you watch the highlights from him from week 2 to I'd say probably week 8, it is terrible. He's very hesitant, really doesn't hit the holes. His highlights were pretty much just around the goal line, and he'll definitely be more focused, I think, this year, especially after the fumble. He's got to improve on his game, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like that price there. I think I would take him. It's just difficult sometimes to play a guy like him because he is sort of game script dependent and touchdown dependent. But at that price, I think it's a worthwhile investment. So let's talk about Gio. 6.02 running back 26. He was PPR running back 16 in 2015. He was great last year. He had 66 targets, which is pretty solid in terms of passing game production. What's your outlook for him this year?
So, like we were saying before, with Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones out, Tyler Eifert's going to be injured. There's a lot of room for targets and opportunity to go around, and Gio Bernard is definitely going to be the dude that fills that void, at least in my opinion, just because they're going to need an offensive weapon that can get down the field and stuff like that. Andy Dalton's going to be throwing the short passes, I'm sure, at least early on until Eifert gets back. And there's plenty of room for him to do better, just like he did last year. I think you drafted him pretty late, and he's still going kind of late now, even for the productivity that he showed last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, PPR running back 16 last year. He's going off the board 26th for running backs. I think he's going to have a career high in targets this year, which his previous career high was 71. One thing also that I think is probably, math says is probably going to go up are just his touchdown numbers. Last year, he had only 2 touchdowns. In the 2 prior years, he had 7 and 8. So I would be surprised to see those touchdowns to come up to 5 or 6 touchdowns from the 2 from last year. So that makes a difference as well. 4 touchdowns is 24 fantasy points. That's huge.
Yeah.
So one thing I will say is that, like Hill, Gio is also a little bit game script dependent, particularly in the passing game. And this is a team that we think is going to win a decent amount of games. So in the Bengals' losses, Gio had 7 targets per game. In their wins, he averaged 3.2 targets per game. So that's a little worrisome, but it also knows that particularly in DFS, this would be something that you can take advantage of a lot, because if you think the Bengals are going to lose or play from behind that week because they're playing a very good team,
right,
bam, Gio's your guy. He'll be used a lot, in the third and fourth quarters.
Yeah, they basically play off one another in a very negative way for fantasy players. If Jeremy Hill's going to have a good game, Gio Bernard is probably not going to, and vice versa. So it's just something it's the gamble that you take when you're taking either of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the wide receivers here. This is also an interesting area. Really, I think a lot of the Bengals and where their production is going to come from is very interesting this year. AJ Green obviously is the place to start. 1.08 off the board, and wide receiver 5 currently behind only Brown, Julio, Odell, and DeAndre Hopkins. Do you think that's fair, or do you think he should be higher, lower?
I think he should be above Hopkins. I've been flipping back and forth on that recently, though. Just deciding like AJ Green's been there. He's sustained a high level of being elite, and then Hopkins is there's a lot of upside there. But you know what you're getting with AJ Green. He's just going to continue to be awesome as long as Andy Dalton is there. AJ Green's definitely going to see around 130 targets, probably more. And now that the offense is decimated and they need like someone to perform, it's going to be AJ Green. So he's going to see a lot of targets, a lot of opportunities, and he's going to probably get some more goal line work, which he doesn't normally get with all the other guys that they have. So we could see an uptake in touchdowns, even though he usually scores around like anywhere from 6 to 10 touchdowns a season.
Yeah, I completely agree with the target numbers. I'm actually projecting him to be closer to like the 150, 160 range in targets. He had 132 a year ago, but again, with Jones and Sanu out, I think those might go up. His catch rate may go down a little bit, but really if he stays healthy, he's basically a lock for 90 catches, 1,300 yards and double-digit touchdowns. Like that's like just what's going to happen. So it's barring injury, it's very, very safe. It's a very safe first-round pick, and I'm pretty down with him as the fifth wide receiver.
So I was saying that I was flip-flopping on Hopkins and Greens. Let's say you have the fifth pick and those two are available. What are you doing, Walsh?
This is difficult because I haven't gone through and projected the Texans completely, but right now I'd say I'd go Hopkins, but it's very close. It's very close. I think those top three are like a definite tier, and then like the next tier is kind of like Hopkins, Green, and Dez. And it's difficult kind of deciding between those guys as well. But yeah, let's move on to the other receivers. Obviously Jones and Sanu are gone. Some other guys have to catch passes. Brandon LaFell is likely going to start the year as a starting outside wide receiver.
Yes.
Last year, currently he's 14.08 wide receiver 71. Last year, Pro Football Focus ranked him 118th out of 121 eligible wide receivers. That's not very good.
No.
He's had one fantasy relevant year in his career. It was 2014 when he got about 115 targets and also had Tom Brady at his quarterback. His catch rates kind of varied a lot over his career. It was all the way down to 50% last year. The bottom line is that Brandon LaFell is not a spectacular wide receiver, but do you think he can contribute in fantasy this year?
It's hard because the number 2 wide receiver for the Bengals with Andy Dalton under center has always performed at least somewhere in the area of wide receiver 30, sometimes in the 20s. So he's good. Like one of these guys, I'm talking about Brandon LaFell and Tyler Boyd. Sorry, I kind of threw him in there. But one of these guys is going to be the 2, and one of these guys is going to have value, and they're going super late. So I think whoever is officially the 2 on the depth chart warrants like a late pick or consideration for late pick. It really doesn't matter if it's LaFell or Boyd. I kind of picture them the same. After watching Boyd's highlights and like figuring out like what he was all about, it was some like his highlights were cool, but overall he's an unpolished receiver. He's not very fast. So they're kind of one and the same right now as far as what you can expect. So it's just kind of going to be who is in that spot is going to have value. So it's going to be one of these guys.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I'm not real high on LaFell just because like he's bad, like he's not a good receiver. And I think they'll be looking to use Tyler Boyd a lot more. I think Tyler Boyd's an interesting late round pick. We'll talk about him as well. I mean, he's 1402 wide receiver 66. And in terms of his skill set, I said I know you said like in terms of like the fantasy outlook right now, they're one and the same. But in terms of skill set, he's actually like the anti-LaFell. He's not overly athletic. He had a 4.58 40 time, as you said, pretty slow. But he's a great route runner and he has great hands. So he was used a lot close to the line of scrimmage in college. He's played in the slot. He's played on the outside. They put him in the backfield occasionally at Pittsburgh too.
Yep.
So he's got a diverse skill set, and he's a good route runner. So that's the kind of guy who can normally get in there and contribute right away. I know Zampese said he wants to use him in the slot early while he's learning the outside a bit better. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Boyd moves outside sometime during the season and just takes Brandon LaFell's role.
Right. I think like the overall plan is for him to overtake LaFell at some point in the season, probably late, which isn't ideal for drafting and harboring like Tyler Boyd. I mean, unless you want to, you totally can. He's going to be a very late pick for you. So if you do that, you just got to wait it out. He's probably not going to be seeing, like you said, on the outside till around week 8 or something like that. But yeah, I forgot. Yeah, he's basically the Mohamed Sanu like replacement. Like he can throw, he does the jet sweeps and all that shit. And like you say, he does have great hands. If you want to watch some cool shit, watch Tyler Boyd's highlights. They're kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, it's what was I going to say? I had one more thing on Tyler Boyd, and now I can't remember it. Oh, one thing in terms of negative fantasy aspect is that he's probably going to need a high target volume to be relevant because he doesn't get downfield and he's not a big touchdown guy. He's not going to be a double-digit touchdown guy during his career in all likelihood. So yeah, just keep an eye there. No other wide receivers are really relevant for them, right? Brandon Tate, James Wright, Cody.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's a fucking mess. It just kind of sort out who's going to be like the third, but not relevant.
Fair enough. So let's get into Tyler Eifert. As we said before, they're saying he may miss some games early in the season here, which is concerning. He's still going tight end 6.06. Excuse me. Just burped. But I'm not even drinking beer on the podcast, and I burped. Jeez, what am I doing? So Eifert last year was great, but his production was due to touchdowns. Can you see yourself drafting him with the knowledge that he's coming into the season hurt?
No, I cannot. And if you look at his stats last year, not very crazy as far like every other everything besides touchdowns in the stat sheet is kind of pedestrian. 74 targets, 52 catches, 615 yards. So with Tyler Eifert probably missing at least a couple games to start the season to get healthy, it's not looking too good, especially to warrant a 6th. He's going in the 6th with the 6th pick. That is very high, and there are plenty of other dudes you can take, and a lot of other tight ends that you could take too, because they'll be starting week 1. So I would not advise taking Tyler Eifert that early. You can definitely sneak him in later because he is still very good, and will probably be a big red zone guy for them when he does come back.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He's a red zone monster, but he just last year, like the number that I normally look for with tight ends in terms of targets is that they're getting 6 per game. He averaged slightly under 6 targets per game in 2015, and only 5 of his 13 games played had 6 or more targets. So the touchdowns really made up for just not spectacular usage last year. I think he'll likely average more targets per game when he does return, like 8 or so, that kind of thing. But who's to say that he's going to be completely healthy when he returns? And this is a guy who's never actually played a full season as well. So who's to say that he's going to not re-injure himself? There's a lot of risk involved there, which kind of brings us to Tyler Kroft, who will be starting week 1 if Tyler Eifert isn't there. He's shown like some promise in the past. You got any interest there?
It's interesting. It's just I wouldn't play him in fantasy until anything crazy happens. Like he's shown he's had some random goal line touchdowns and stuff like that. But other than that, he's not anything close to what Tyler Eifert is going to produce for you, or any of the other tight ends that you could draft, really. So I think it's a safer bet to take somebody else. And if Tyler Eifert's going to miss like an extended period of time, like 6 to 8 weeks or anything crazy like that, although that's kind of unlikely, and he's performing, you can definitely waiver wire him. It's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. Don't draft him. Just keep an eye on him, a name to keep in the back of the mind during the season. All right. Anything else on the Bengals there?
That is it. All hail the Bengals.
All right, let's go. Let's get into the Browns. The Browns. Vegas win total for this year, 4.5. Not spectacular. They were 18th in offensive pace last year, so pretty middle of the pack. Their offensive line was bad, and two of their better offensive linemen left in free agency. They did try to address it a little bit in the draft, but their offensive line last year was, according to Football Outsiders, was 29th in run blocking and 26th in pass blocking, and is not likely to get much better this year. And, you know, in terms of the pass game, they lost Travis Benjamin and Brian Hartline. That's over 200 targets. If you add Dwayne Bowe's 13 targets into it, I think it's like 220 targets total in total.
I mean, you gotta add Dwayne Bowe's targets to it.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, those 13 targets are pretty big. Someone could take over that volume. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about RG3 coming in the offseason. He's got his second chance. I didn't even talk about Hugh Jackson. They got freaking Hugh Jackson as a coach. He's good. Hugh Jackson is a good coach. But as we said with the Bengals last year, what he wants to do is kind of slow the game down and run a lot. I don't think he's going to be able to with this team because the offensive line is bad and they're not going to be winning games. So you can't really slow down and run when you're losing. Right. Anyway, RG3. What's the take here? He's not getting drafted. Should he be?
No, I don't see any reason. He hasn't played a game since 2014, and in 2014 he only played 9 games. So this dude is going to be rusty as shit, and he's RG3, who has not been great since his rookie year. So there's no reason. I mean, you know, he's very talented, but he hasn't shown shit in a long time. So please don't take RG3 in your draft. Just don't do it. And there's not a lot of high praise coming out of Cleveland for him. He's like fighting for his job. Like Hugh Jackson won't be like, yeah, RG3 is our dude. He just won't do it, which is funny.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to draft him, and he may lose his job to Josh McCown at some point during the year. So let's move on to the running backs, and we can talk about the Isaiah Crowell news. He posted a picture on social media, not an actual picture, a drawing of someone slitting a cop's throat. Not great, Bob.
No.
Not great. First of all, just don't do that shit. And then second of all, you're a fucking football player, dude. Like you can't do the Browns or the Cleveland chief of police was like, if he doesn't do something to make good on this, I'm going to pull back my guys and we're not going to do any security at Browns games.
Which is very intense.
Yeah, honestly, I think the Browns should cut him.
There was a lot of talk of that too, and they didn't. They just made him apologize, and he did. And then I think that same cop told him to kiss his ass or something.
Yeah, no, he did. He said he needs to deliver a better apology, and he needs to go down to Dallas and donate money in person to the families of the police officers who were killed in those shootings, or he's not going to put Cleveland police on the Browns games. But anyway, so best case scenario for Crowell is that he doesn't get cut. And he's the guy who carries the bulk of the load in the run game and gets goal line work for the Browns, who are most likely going to be playing from behind and not scoring many touchdowns. Currently, he's going 9.09, running back 42. I wouldn't draft him until double-digit rounds.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, it sounds cool on paper, like he's going to get a lot of carries, he's going to get the goal line work, but he is on the Browns, and they are not going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, and they're not going to get a lot of opportunities to run. So his upside is very limited.
Yes, very much agreed. And I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 games during the year where, he scores multiple touchdowns or, he breaks a long run, that kind of thing. But it's just going to be very difficult to predict when that'll come. So Duke Johnson is the guy who is interesting. And he's currently going 5.12, running back number 25. Duke last year had 74 targets. And in the first 2 weeks of the season, he had 0 targets in both of them. So after that, he averaged 5.3 targets a game. I'm projecting him for around 90 targets this year, and I think he's also going to get 120 or more carries. The offensive line, as I said, is not great. So whoever's quarterbacking likely won't have a lot of time to let downfield routes develop, and they'll have to get the ball out quick, basically, which all leads me to believe that Duke Johnson could get the most catches of any running back in the NFL this year.
Damn. Good prediction. Very impressive stuff, Walsh. I was thinking he was going to catch a lot of passes, maybe not the most in the NFL, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility considering what the Browns are going to be doing, playing from behind, RG3 just throwing dump-offs to him. So, yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think Don used that recently. I started cracking up.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. That's a good one. Yeah, I gotta add that into like my rotation of vernacular. Make that happen more. So what's your opinion on that price? Do you think he's good there?
I think the price is justified. I think your expectation of him is justified. It's just in that area, there are other dudes that I like Ryan Matthews going a little bit ahead of him, Gio Bernard under him, Jeremy Hill even behind him. So there's just other dudes I'd rather put some stock into than kind of take a gamble on Duke, because you don't really know what the Browns are so bad. That's just in the back of my mind. The Browns are just so bad. So yeah, I can't pump myself up to take Duke Johnson over any of those guys I just mentioned.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, looking at the guys going around there, there's not a ton of guys that I would take him over. I think, maybe
Would you take Jonathan Stewart?
I think I'd take Duke Johnson before Jonathan Stewart. I think.
Okay. I think that's one that I would do too.
Okay. Yeah, I might take him over. A couple guys going ahead of him, like Matt Jones, Jay Ajayi, maybe.
I'd rather have Ajayi.
That's fair.
He's in this the very middle of the pack for running backs that could be awesome, and then you're gambling on a Browns running back. So I just can't make sense of doing it in that spot.
Yeah, and if you go wide receiver heavy early and you're going to try and load up on mid-round running backs, there's a good chance that he could be your RB1 or 2 if you take that pretty extremely. So I'd be fine with that. If I decided to really load up on wide receivers, maybe take a tight end a little bit early. But yeah. Let's move on to wide receivers here. First one going, actually only one going off the board, Corey Coleman. He was the 9th overall pick in the NFL draft, and he is currently going as the 11th pick in the 9th round in fantasy drafts. That puts him at wide receiver 42. Coleman's fast as shit. He's not a complete route runner, and he's gotten comparisons to Percy Harvin in that he's wildly talented, but you might need to manufacture touches for him. Rather than him just going out there and, running typical wide receiver routes. What's your opinion on Coleman?
You pretty much got it. I mean, I also saw the comparison to John Brown. He's just very fast, but kind of incomplete. Can't really play on the outside. So that's going to be hard to do on a Browns team where they don't have a number, their number one receiver is Duke Johnson, basically. So they're going to have to figure something out with these guys. I don't even, Marilyn Moore, Taylor Gabriel, Terrell Pryor's there. They just got to figure out something to get Corey Coleman. He's going to have to play in the slot, I would think, to be productive. And I just don't really know what's going on there yet. I'll probably have to see some preseason shit to kind of decide where to gauge him. I mean, he's going in a very late spot, but I'd rather take some other dudes for sure.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth on Coleman because part of me is this is a Browns offense that's not going to be good at all. The quarterback situation is questionable. He's got concerns about being able to handle the NFL game right away. But he's going to get more than 100 targets, almost guaranteed, So where there's that many targets, there's likely to be fantasy production. I think I'm okay with him at that price, maybe a little bit earlier even for me. But I wouldn't go much higher than 8th or 9th round, really. Let's talk about Andrew Hawkins. That's who I want to talk about here.
We can talk about Hawkins.
Hugh Jackson likes him. There's he's been good in the past. He was fantasy relevant with the Bengals when Hugh Jackson was there.
Yep.
And they're saying he's going to be the number 2 receiver right now. Like most Cleveland beat writers are saying they're going to start Coleman and Hawkins, and then Rashard Higgins is going to come onto the field most likely, in 3 wide receiver sets and probably kick either Coleman or Hawkins to the slot. Hawkins is going undrafted, and with Coleman being such an unknown quantity, like Hawkins could also get 100 targets. And if he's going to do that, then I like him, because he runs a lot of close to the line of scrimmage routes, and he's a guy, if you get the ball in his hands, then he can do good things with it. So he's a guy that I'm targeting as a late round flyer because he's not being taken, and I think he's got the potential to do something.
Yeah, I mean, you keep stressing like that somebody is going to get this volume, and that is absolutely true. Like somebody has to. They don't have a choice. Someone's going to have to catch those targets. And like the only thing that bothers me is Coleman and Hawkins are both slot guys, and they're just going to have to feel like they just have a bunch of slot guys. They don't have a number 1. They don't have a number 2. It's just tons and tons of slot guys and nowhere to put them. So I really have to wait and see what they're playing. Like you said, they're going to just kind of switch them out in the slot, and that doesn't really sound all that sweet to me, especially if one of them is going to get the production and the other one probably won't. I just think one of these guys is going to be valuable, and we're not sure which one yet.
Right. That's fair. That's definitely fair. I just, when I say I'm going to, I like Hawkins, I mean, like, I'll take him in the 14th round, before.
Right. Like your last pick of the draft.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like I said, Rashard Higgins is likely the number 3. They also drafted Jordan Payton, who's more of a possession receiver, and Ricardo Lewis, who's sort of like a long-term project. They have Taylor Gabriel. He hasn't shown a lot in his career. And Marlon Moore is more of a special teams guy than anything else. So unlikely to really do much. Let's talk about Gary Barnidge. I'm like so wildly about it. He got 125 targets last year, and he's going to catch every touchdown that a Browns quarterback throws because they don't have any other red zone targets. What's your Barnidge take here?
That's a very fair assumption. I think he'll have a touchdown regression, but I think his stats should probably stay the same. Other than that, like he had 9 touchdowns, they're probably not likely to stick up with that, especially in a transition year through and through for the Browns. So what you're looking at is 125 targets, 79 catches, just over 1,000 yards, and that is completely fine. Like what he finished his tight end 4 last year. That was pretty fucking awesome for an undrafted dude that none of us knew his name until he started catching touchdowns. And where's he going?
He's going 8.5, dude. That's so late.
That's pretty late. I'm like super late on tight ends though. But are you gonna play the Barnidge game? I'm guessing.
Dude, I didn't think I was gonna like Gary Barnidge coming into this year. But like, what other tight end is gonna get 100? 110 to 120 targets that you can get in the 8th round. Like tight ends don't normally get that many targets anyway. So
no, it's a lot.
He could lead. If Jordan Reed gets hurt, then like Gary Barnidge might lead the NFL in tight end targets because Gronk, for all of his great talents, sometimes doesn't get targeted as much in that offense. So like if I told you can draft the guy who's got a good chance of leading the position in targets in the 8th round, like you would have to do it. It's like I don't know. At least in my head, like I just have to take him there.
I agree, Walsh, and it's a good spot to take him. It's fine. I just want to point out that you have said that 3 positions on the Browns will lead the NFL in targets for their positions in about 15 minutes.
Wait, no. I said Duke Johnson and Gary Barnidge.
I think you said Coleman's going to have a lot of targets.
I said he's
going to. All right.
I said he's going to get like 100+ targets, which I do think he will.
Targets.
Yeah, but like they're going to throw the ball like at least 550 times. Okay. Like it's got to go to someone.
I'm thinking maybe Hugh Jackson is a little like stubborn and will continue to like he loves to run the ball, and he might just keep doing that no matter what. I mean, he might just look at this as a fuck it year because like it really is. Like they've added so many people. That's just my thing with the Browns. Like super transition. So I'm watching.
That's very fair. That's very, very fair. That you know, like the Cowboys do that as well, where like even if they're losing, they just like keep running the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that that the Browns do that as well for this year. So that's definitely a good point. But yeah, I like Gary Barnidge. All right, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, No Halftime, and then we'll be right back to talk about the Ravens and answer some reader questions. Enjoy, guys.
You're staring at your weekly fantasy opponent and thinking to yourself, I would love to challenge just one of his players, not his entire team. But your fantasy sports service doesn't allow you to. Now you can on the all-new No Halftime app. The No Halftime app allows you to create individual challenges using players or teams. For example, you could pit Beckham versus Brown, Cam versus Rodgers, or even Ezekiel Elliott versus AP. Creating a challenge takes seconds, and accepting challenges is even easier. No Halftime challenges can be private or public and created for the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, PGA, and other sports. Join today and get started. Real money and fantasy supremacy awaits you. And now you can also try No Halftime for free with $0 challenges. Visit nohalftime.com for more information and to download the No Halftime app for your iPhone or Android device. Receive a bonus by entering in the promo code LTFF at sign up. Receive a free t-shirt when you make a deposit. No Halftime, where the fantasy sports season never takes a break.
All right, and we're back. It's still Walsh and Vinny, and we're still talking AFC North. Let's talk about the Ravens, starting with Joe Flacco. But first, actually, I got ahead of myself. I want to just go over like the typical like offense things. They were 6th in offensive pace last year. The O-line was 14th in run blocking, 2nd in pass blocking, so pretty good. And Vegas has them projected at 7.5 wins. They were also 5th in pass percentage, so they passed the ball a lot last year. But they were also down a lot because they weren't very good last year. Now let's talk about Flacco. He is going
QB 25.
Yeah, 14.09.
Yep.
What's your thoughts?
While I was doing research, everyone is loving him as like a huge flyer for QB2 or 2 quarterback leagues, which I think is fine. I don't know if I'm cool with the like number 2 flyer. I'm just probably going to leave Joe Flacco alone.
That's fair. I'm on the other train. I'm very much liking Joe Flacco. I think if he stays healthy, he's probably gonna set like a personal record for pass attempts in a season. Like
lead the NFL in pass attempts.
No, but like his previous high is like 613 or something like that. And the Ravens last year as a team threw the ball 676 times. So
Jesus
even
Christ.
if they don't throw that many times, like he's probably going to have see the most volume that he's ever seen in his career. So that makes me like him. But Trestman likes to speed up the pace and throw the ball a lot. So I'm pretty down with it as a late round flyer pick.
All right, fair enough. I'm just worried about the ACL, MCL thing, but as long as he's starting week 1, he probably should be fine.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that I feel like I constantly forget that he's just like also coming off serious surgery.
It was on the later side of the season too, right? Wasn't it week when did I think Forsett and him got hurt in the same game? Forsett went down and so did Flacco.
Yeah, so that that could be an issue, but I guess we'll see with the health. And as long as he's able to plant and throw bombs with his big hose, as John Gruden would say, then I'm pretty fine with it. But let's talk about the running backs. This is like stupid. I don't know, and this is going to be a theme for us talking about Ravens position players or skill position players. But like it's all just fucking stupid. They have Justin Forsett. They have Buck Allen. They drafted Kenneth Dixon, who's an interesting prospect. Terrence West got carries for him last year. They also have Lorenzo Taliaferro and Trent Richardson on the freaking roster. Where are we valuing any of these guys? It looks like Forsett's going 10th pick in the 7th round. Buck Allen's going 11.09 and Dixon 12.04.
So, before doing research for it, I didn't realize Justin Forsett is the clear-cut lead dog for the and it's his job to lose in 2006, according to Ryan Mink of Ravens.com, which I found completely baffling. Forsett is going to be 31 during the season, broke his arm to end his season last year. I just thought it was odd they wouldn't have, with all these talented dudes in the backfield, like they wouldn't have just a tryout to see who's the best. But apparently they're going to give Justin Forsett the chance early on to lose the job, which I found pretty interesting. And I think he's not going in a bad spot. He's later for running backs, and he's around like Frank Gore, Melvin Gordon, Chris Ivory, which I think is fine. I'd be a little tempted to take Justin Forsett, I guess, in that area. But if that improves, I probably won't touch him.
Yeah, you're right. The price isn't bad. That's certainly something he's got going in his favor. At the end of the 7th round, you're not doing too bad there. I just want to look up some other guys going around him, and my page won't
I got him.
load. Okay.
So I'll start with Frank Gore going with the 7th pick in the 4th round. So it's Frank Gore, Melvin Gordon, Justin Forsett, and then right behind him is Chris Ivory, Theo Riddick, Charles Sims.
Okay. I think I'd rather have Charles Sims. I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess that's like the right range. None of those guys are like wildly appealing to me.
Right.
And I do think Buck Allen will keep at least somewhat of a role in the passing game because he's a better pass catcher than Forsett is. But it's
I'm kind of writing off Buck Allen. Like he wasn't like we all hyped him up last year when he had the opportunity, and he really didn't do much with it. He excelled when we didn't expect him to excel, and he had like a touchdown in a game where you wouldn't have started him, and then just didn't get carries the next game. And then with the addition of Kenneth Dixon, who is a capable 3-down back, I think he's the dude to own for the late round pick, especially since him and Buck Allen are going within a couple picks of each other. So I think the upside lies with Kenneth Dixon.
Okay, that's very fair. I think Buck Allen has more of a defined role today than Kenneth Dixon does, but I think the guy with the most potential to, as you said, be like the full-time guy in that backfield is Kenneth Dixon, because Buck Allen showed himself as a good pass catcher and not a great between the tackles runner last year. I'm pretty sure he had one game with like 12 targets.
That is crazy.
But let me just trying to bring up his game logs.
I didn't see that.
He had one game with 13 targets and another game with 10, a third game with 9 targets.
Oh shit.
But so like he's the kind of guy where like if they're losing, if they're down for most of the game, he would potentially be used more heavily. But yeah, like you said, like he didn't show a ton last year. They did bring in Dixon. What round did they draft him in? They drafted Dixon in the 4th, which, relative to running back value, that's a pretty, decent investment in a running back. And Dixon is a guy that he's kind of polarizing among most pundits, I suppose. The film guys like him, the stat guys don't like him. So I don't know. We'll see how he is. He's definitely worth a flyer there, I think, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other guys we can safely ignore, right?
Yes, I believe so. I will suppress the Trent Richardson feelings once again. Shove that real deep down.
Yeah. And again, this is going to be a theme with the Ravens for the rest of it, too. Preseason matters. Who's getting the snaps with the starters for these guys matters a lot. Because there's going to be production in this offense. It's a Trestman offense, and we need to figure out where that production is going to come from. Wide receivers, Steve Smith and Kamar Aiken are the projected starters, with Mike Wallace potentially manning the slot. They also do have Rashad Perryman, who was supposedly going to be out for the season and is now going to be back during training camp. And they also drafted Chris Moore, who's kind of a straight-line speedster in the 4th round. we'll start with Aiken, who was great last year, as basically the only target in the entire offense. But nonetheless, he was a very good fantasy producer. He's going in the 11th pick in the 10th round. What's your opinion there?
Oh, I love Kamar Aiken, mainly because he saved my season last year. But by save my season, I mean not make me in last. So I owe a lot to Kamar Aiken. I do like him. He was actually good like all year if you drafted him. He had 127 targets, 75 catches, almost 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Granted, one of them was that Hail Mary against the Chiefs. Sorry, Shrek, but that was really cool. So I'm going to write that off a little bit. But he was very productive, got a lot of targets, and very solid touchdown output. So I think if they give him a chance, if Steve Smith is even going to start week 1, I guess he'll be the number 2 for them. But he'll be out there to produce, and he's very good. So I really do like Kamar Aiken this year. Where's he going? He's going very late.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's not.
No, he's going pretty late.
No, he's going super late.
10th round. He's going around Torrey Smith and Sanu are the 2 guys that he's sandwiched between. And then for some stupid reason, Josh Gordon is also there.
Dude, what? All right. I can't bring that up right now.
Yeah. Let's not talk about
that shit keeps happening. I see that all the time, and I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Kamar, that's great for Kamar Aiken. You're getting a lot of value.
It's definitely a much better pick than Steve Smith in the 8th round. I will say that.
Yes.
The thing that worries me with Aiken is that, again, he was a great producer, but he did get a very large volume of targets, and I don't know if that volume is going to stay the same just because of all the guys that they have in this offense. And again, that's where preseason is going to make a difference. See who's lining up with the starters, see who's lining up where, see who's getting targets, that kind of thing. If I'm comfortable with the fact that Kamar Aiken can get 100 targets, I love him. I love him there. I'm not currently comfortable with that, but I think it is definitely a possibility.
Torrey Smith or Kamar Aiken?
Torrey Smith for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do, but I like asking the Torrey Smith question. I think I did that last week too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Tavon's going right there. So AFC North, Corey Coleman or Kamar Aiken for you?
Oh, Kamar Aiken.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Yeah, I don't know where I would go exactly on that one yet. But anyway, Steve Smith is going in the 10th round. He's coming off what was it? He tore his AC. He tore a bunch of stuff, right? Or did he break his leg? I don't know.
No. It was, I think it was just the Achilles. It was
just the Achilles. Okay.
Not the 10th round, the 8th round with the 10th pick.
Yeah, 8th round with the 10th pick.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch him there. He's like a 40-year-old man who's coming off a serious leg injury. When he was producing before he got hurt, so, and Joe Flacco does like throwing the ball to him. So I guess there's that, but just I don't know. Part of it is potentially the fact that I hate Steve Smith as a human being as well. I think he is not good. It was like the guy who used to be a teammate was like, you were always a bully in the locker room. And his response was to threaten to beat the guy up.
That was it.
It's like, I'm not a bully. I'll beat you up, dude. What the fuck? Anyway, let's talk about the rest of the wide receivers briefly. Brashad Perryman and Mike Wallace are both going very, very late. Perryman is wide receiver 65, first pick of the 14th round. And Mike Wallace is wide receiver 57, 11th pick in the 12th round. Do you have interest in a flyer on either of them?
No. The Perryman stuff kind of worried me. He was ready to miss the season, then 8 games. Now he's back. A little concerning. He still hasn't played any snaps. Very comparable to Kevin White for the Bears. A very high-profile guy, but we just haven't seen them on an NFL field yet, so I don't really know how to gauge his value yet. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, where did you say he was going?
First pick in the 14th round.
Okay. At that point, yeah, it's a flyer, probably your last pick. So at that point, it's fine. Anything more than that, I would not do that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they're both draftable because again, we don't know their roles. But don't go nuts. And again, keep an eye on the preseason. Anything else on the wide receivers, or should we move to the also like weirdly crowded tight end position?
Let's move to the oddly weird. Yes, the tight end. I couldn't even say.
Yes, indeed. So
yes, please.
At tight end, we have Ben Watson brought over from New Orleans. We also have Dennis Pitta trying to make a comeback from injury. We also have Max Williams, a former second-round pick who's entering his second year, and Crockett Gilmore, who has been productive in the past and has a good name. Is there anything that's draftable there? Do you have any insight into who's actually going to produce for them at tight end?
I want Dennis Pitta to be a thing so bad, but I know that he's not going to be a thing, and I should not even talk about it because I do think that probably Ben Watson will be the dude. They brought him in for a reason. He had a great season last year, so I would imagine they'd give him at least the opportunity to lose the job to one of those three.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think Ben Watson's probably the guy, unless like he really looks like he's going to be a part of the offense in preseason or camp or that kind of thing. I don't want to draft him because again, it's crowded as hell, and he could lose his job at any time if other guys play better or he plays not that great.
Correct.
Anything else here about the Ravens?
No, I think. Man, they have a lot of people, but yeah, I think we got them.
All right, cool. Let's get on to the reader questions. So first one from Matt, we got a keeper question. Can only keep one guy, Julio Jones, which would cost a first-round pick, Amari Cooper, a fourth-round pick, and Devontae Parker, a 19th-round pick. Full-point PPR league. Where are you going here?
I'm going to stay with Julio Jones. Just lose your first pick on him. He's, 27, and he's in the prime, and he's a very elite wide receiver. So I would just keep riding out Julio Jones.
Yeah, he's a known quantity. I agree. He's a known quantity, and he would be spending anywhere from the first to the third pick, most likely in the draft, to take him anyway. So it's not like you're losing value on there. You're guaranteeing that you have one of the best wide receivers in the league. The Devontae, the other ones to me that they're like tempting, but like it's in my head, it's like, and then I'm like, no, don't get cute.
Right. Yeah. They're both great prospects, but if you are having second doubts, Matt, about Julio Jones, I'd probably go Amari Cooper because we haven't seen that much out of Devontae Parker yet. We're kind of banking on him producing this year. So if you don't want Julio Jones, Amari Cooper over to Parker.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. All right, from Zachariah, what is your guys' opinion on Kelvin Benjamin? Do you think he's a mid-round pick, late flyer, etc.? Kelvin Benjamin, I'm having a tough time projecting him this year, and just the Panthers' offense as a whole. A lot of it is because the only sample size that we have from Kelvin Benjamin is like when he was the guy in that wide receiver core. And now it's possible that Devin Funches contributes. Ted Ginn, against all odds, was a serviceable wide receiver last year. Also, he's going in the third round right now. He's like wide receiver. What is he? He's wide 19. Receiver 19. Wide receiver 19. I don't like him at that price. I think your judgment of mid-round is probably where I would take him, Zachariah, but I don't think I'm going to find him there.
Yeah, he's probably going to go early. The thing with Benjamin is like his upside is with touchdowns, and Cam loves to steal those touchdowns from everybody. So you're kind of limiting yourself on his upside, especially at that price. So I definitely wouldn't be taking him in the third, but I do like him this year.
Okay, that's fair. And then our last question here, which we may have a little bit of a tough time answering, but from Eric, basically Eric's in a keeper league, PPR, and he has Russell Wilson. Do you keep him or just go for another quarterback in the draft? So this is pretty dependent on a lot of things, like the league rules in terms of what you're giving up to keep Russell Wilson, any guys on your team that you're not keeping, that you're not keeping when you do keep Russell Wilson. I mean, just like, I like Russell Wilson a lot this year. I think he'll be a top 5, potentially top 3 fantasy quarterback. So like in a vacuum, yeah, you should keep Russell Wilson. But a lot of that depends on what pick you're giving up, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you nailed it, Walsh. We need a little bit more information. Also, what other QBs are being kept? Like, who else is going to be freed up for you to potentially grab, or just what's going on, really? So, we need, like Walsh, yeah, you said it best. Russell Wilson will be very good. If you don't have a crazy pick for him, yeah, keep him.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that just about does it for us today, guys. And thank you very much for tuning in. I do apologize that we have the blip in the radar last week. We were stuck in the hot car while Shrek was on vacation, and now we're out. We're wagging our tails and we're talking about football. Mostly wagging our tails, though. We don't talk about football too good. Anyway, Rodgers and Don will be back with the Packers, the Bears, and the Steelers. I believe they're recording that tomorrow, so by the time you guys listen to it, it'll be today. But yeah, you got anything else for the people, Vinny?
That is it. Let's wrap
All right,
it up,
well,
Walsh.
cool. Yeah, all you guys have a great day and a great rest of your week and a great life. All right, see you guys.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.